Well, you see, that's the whole point, is the word lie needs to be defined. Sometimes not telling the truth, all of the truth, is your moral obligation. And you have a moral obligation to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth at all times to anyone who asks you. You would say, that's not in the Bible. The moral thing to do is for me not to tell you. You ain't getting nothing out of me. Those issues relating to whether you have a moral obligation to tell the whole truth at all times to everyone, that needs to be answered by pointing out you don't. You do not owe them the truth. And see, that's another fallacy. People run around thinking life is just, and they run around thinking you owe the truth to everyone. You don't. That's what the Bible teaches.
That was from Morey's available audio tape from the REF, catalog number J54.
If someone tells you ahead of time that they don't believe that it's wrong to lie, can you believe them for anything they say after that? If someone tells you they believe it's all right to lie if they get in a pinch, how can you believe them anyway? At any time.
I received this letter from a gentleman who is, you would recognize him, he's editor of a magazine, and I didn't solicit this letter, by the way. I've been sending this man some of the materials I have written, and he voluntarily wrote to me, and he said, yesterday Bob Morey called me and told me one of Larry Wessel's associates confessed that he and Wessels had lied and run away with some money. And now, Jim, in the context of all this, he has to be referring to you.
There's nobody else he could be referring to.
And also in the context here, he says that you had confessed that you and Wessels had lied. Were you making any confession for Larry Wessels in this?
No.
You weren't over there saying, Larry Wessels and I have come to bow down and say we're sorry. You're just speaking for Jim Toungate.
Yeah, and I didn't confess to lying.
Okay.
I mean, that's not true either.
Now, also, it says here that you run away with some money. Where'd you spend that money, Jim?
I'm as poor can be.
Now, Jim, what I'm saying is about this is a man who's located hundreds of miles away from Robert Morey. He has no reason in the world to be concerned about this controversy that existed between REF, Larry Wessel's, Bob Morey.
Well, the only interest that I can think of, Bob, is that in the issue before the last one that I saw
of this man's magazine,
the Christian News, he had an article in there by Robert Morey. Then he also had an article which was taken out of our magazine, Christian Answers Journal, on Hinduism, that he ran into at the same time. So maybe Morey feels like we're competing with him, and he wants to get us out of the way.
Actually, I regret and apologize to Brother Otten for having to bring him into this, but after all, by the nature of his carrying these articles by both Morey and the Christian Answers, he has put his foot into the ring, so to speak, and so his letter becomes somewhat significant, because here he's saying that from Robert Morey, he is getting this information that one of the associates, who is obviously you, and Wessels had lied and run away with some money. Now, does that have anything to do with what you confessed in Atlanta?
No.
So you didn't go up there and say, hey, Morey, I lied. Hey, Morey, I run away with some money.
No.
So now, the funny thing about this, too, is that Roger Stewart, who heard this confession, Roger wrote to me, and you have seen the letter, where he said, in effect, that there is a possibility that someone else besides Morey is responsible for this story that discredits you as a liar and a thief, when in fact, this man got it directly from Morey. Now, if Roger is correct, if someone else is responsible for the story, what it means is that Morey is picking up the story and passing it on to Herman Otten, which is preposterous. And so my interpretation is that Roger is trying to, well, he's avoiding and he's trying to resist accepting the fact that Bob Morey is really behind this story.
Right.
And so these are a couple of reports. Now,
well, Roger, in the letter that he sent to me, he said, along with Jim Carroll in this, he says, during the discussions you had with Dr. Morey, or anyone else for that matter, you most certainly never admitted to any of these allegations of embezzlement of funds from the Research and Education Foundation on behalf of the Wessels or anyone else. Jim Carroll and I back you up completely on this. Then he asked for proof
that that's clear enough.
Any of this had been said or written. Please find the source and I will personally deal with the recipients of this misinformation.
That Roger Stewart and Jim Carroll both vindicate you,
right,
number one, of lying, and number two, of stealing money or confessing to stealing money, we'll put it that way. And any of these charges that Morey or anyone else has made, other than you did do what you said you did in regard to being sorry for having a part in doing this, and now in retrospect you look at back, you really don't see that you had any real need to make that apology, because Larry never called the man an adulterer or a homosexual or anything. He said he defended him against these things. So that was an overreaction on Morey's part, or a deliberate effort to make it say more than Larry actually said. Now, Jim, I also, with my own ears, in the presence of a lady today, heard her say essentially what Herman Otten says in here. And she was hundreds of miles away from Robert Morey, and he called on the telephone, and I said, now, you don't have to quote exactly what it said. All I want to know is, what impression did you get? She said, I got the impression that Jim Toungate was at a conference, and he got up before the group, which I felt like, she said, was the group of people at the conference, and he confessed to having done all these things that, you know, we've already gone over here, the theft and whatnot, and that he was making this public confession this way. Now, the point is that this is being broadcast around the country. You are being the one who, in effect, is being used as a club against Larry Wessels in this situation, and it's making it look like that you have been the confessor, that Larry has stolen money, Larry has embezzled money, and Larry has done all these wicked things, and that you have confessed this before a religious tribunal of some sort, of EMNR people at a conference, or as representatives, as he says here, and this is an open public thing that you've been done. Now, that's the impression I get. Now, what I want to know is, what do you evaluate this situation to be?
I think the motivation behind it was to attempt to drive a wedge between Larry Wessels and myself, which failed miserably, because it was done in the presence of two witnesses who both can verify what I said, what I did, and against these outrageous claims that I had confessed to participating in the embezzlement, which, by the way, would implicate me. If I knew about it, I would be held criminally responsible for covering up evidence.
Right.
And all of it is just simply untrue.
Well, Jim, one thing I can't understand, and you may know more about this gentleman, of course, I'm sure you do, than I, at this point in time, do, because you've met him personally and talked to him personally. But now, Brother Stewart, and he is a younger man, he is a young man like in your category compared to me. I'm the old goat, so to speak. Well, Brother Stewart is seemingly in a spiral of confusion about where to light on this thing. For instance, I got this letter from him, this was October 31st, just here recently, and he says, for several reasons, I'm beginning to conclude that you might be in cahoots with Bob Morey to further discredit the assertions of those you seemingly represent. Now, how he comes to that conclusion, he could very well have his own good reasons, but what in the world have I put out, said, or done that would make anyone think that I was in cahoots with Morey